Welcome everyone. I'm Jed Shlackman. I work as a holistic counselor and a spiritual energy healer as well as a hypnotherapist. For this video I'd like to speak about the subject of spiritual bypassing, and in the context I'll be presenting it, I'll be pointing out how there can be a temporary peace provided when a person uses some form of spiritual bypassing in their life. I want to begin making an analogy here with people using some form of drug or medicine to avoid pain or suffering. Since I work as a counselor, I often interact with people who are in some way using chemical substances to cope with or avoid or escape from some form of emotional distress or suffering. So people may be using alcohol or marijuana or opiates, some other substance, to kind of numb their pain or take their consciousness into some other state where they're not really having to face or deal with whatever challenges or stresses they're having in their life. When people do that, there is temporary relief, right? So for the time that you're under the influence of that substance, you may be experiencing some form of peace or relief. You're not stressed, you're not suffering, you're not in pain. Of course, that's only going to be temporary. Those effects are going to wear off, and the circumstances of your life or your past traumas or whatever it is that created suffering or distress, those still exist. You haven't actually resolved those things or left them behind. They're still there for you to eventually face or confront at some time. So when we look at using substances or drugs as a form of bypassing, facing life challenges, facing discomfort or distress, we can pretty quickly or readily see the drawback in that, how it leads ultimately perhaps to additional suffering or more distress because we didn't face things, we didn't learn what we may have had an opportunity to learn, and so on. This isn't to condemn anyone for going into that path of using those substances for relief. It's something that's readily available. It's kind of natural and easy to do that. At some point in our life, pretty much everyone uses that pain relief approach in some way, even if it's just for some simple physical injury with pain. Someone takes a pain reliever. With the psychological and emotional distress, people will use many different types of substances potentially as a means of relief. Some of them are considered recreational, some of them are prescribed by doctors, but fundamentally they're giving temporary relief. They're not actually resolving whatever challenge or issue might be present for that person's life. Now, shifting into the context of spirituality and religion and how we confront some of the bigger challenges or issues in life, we can see the role that religions often play, where people will in some way attach to a particular religious tradition or belief system and find that that brings them some peace or comfort in their life. It gives them a way to think about or respond to challenges in life. There's many different variations on that theme, since not everyone has the exact same beliefs in their religion, in their philosophy. Sometimes religion helps people resolve, temporarily at least, feelings of shame or guilt. So if people have done things that they think are bad or sinful, then a religion might give them a story or narrative that tells them that they're absolved of any consequence or any punishment for what they've done, as long as they follow that religious path or embrace the beliefs of that tradition, or as long as in the present they change their life to conform to a particular moral code offered by a religious tradition. Religion also gives people opportunities to not have to think more deeply or more extensively about many complex human and spiritual phenomena, the complexities of dark and light in human life, in relationships, also navigating non-physical realms of experience, so dealing with things like channeling and mediumship, extraterrestrials, out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, psychedelic experiences, all the phenomena that may arise as one might explore those phenomena. If you just attach to a more simple religious philosophy that tells you this is how everything is, this is all you need to do to be a quote good person, and you don't need to worry about all that other stuff, that can bring someone peace. It gives them the opportunity to keep things kind of simple and not have to think or worry more about what they might encounter in those other forms of spiritual exploration. So it's not to judge or condemn anyone for limiting their exploration of spirituality. Depending on where we're at on our personal journey, on our level of maturation or evolution, the so-called bypassing I'm referring to might be what's needed or suitable for you at that point in your journey. So a person might need that sense of simplicity or peace in their life. They might feel kind of overwhelmed or overstressed by having to deal with the more complex phenomena, just as a person might be so overwhelmed by anxiety or grief or some form of emotional distress, temporarily using some form of chemical substance to relieve themselves, for them might seem like the best option at that time, until maybe later they're ready to begin processing more, facing more of those distressing elements of life. So when it comes to spiritual exploration, a lot of people start to go into things like yoga and meditation and channeling and psychedelic experiences, regression experiences, etc. And they might start to feel kind of overwhelmed with all the different ideas and topics that might bring up, with a concern about potentially interacting with or potentially being influenced by some negative force. If people don't want to have to worry about that, if they want to avoid navigating those phenomena, then they might confine themselves to something much more simpler, much more basic or dualistic in terms of a religious practice or belief. So that might be what is suitable for that person at that point in their journey. But from a more expanded perspective in spiritual awareness or evolution, someone could look back upon that and label it or define it as a form of spiritual bypassing, because rather than really learning about or understanding more about different dimensions of spiritual reality, spiritual phenomena, learning to face and go through them, a person is kind of bypassing that by falling back upon a more simple, a more basic form of philosophy or belief that avoids looking into those other phenomena. I hope that so far those who are watching are able to follow my logic or my concepts here. As we grow in our personality, in a sense, we tend to become more open to looking at things that are more complex, more nuanced. We go beyond really basic right and wrong ideas. We're not afraid to be influenced or affected by people and things we encounter in the world around us. So we may feel that we don't need so much sheltering or protection anymore, that we have the sense of self, of confidence in our own being and our own connection to our own spiritual essence or our own relationship with the supreme creative being, whatever label you give that, God or some other term. So as we mature in that respect, we might feel we're ready to explore more of these other aspects of spirituality, other planes of existence or dimensions of consciousness. We're not afraid to travel out of body, for example, and see what types of beings or energies we might encounter there. We're not afraid that we're going to get consumed by evil. We're not afraid that we're going to get disconnected from our physical body. We trust that our own greater self is always there, helping guide us, helping us grow, helping us expand our awareness of who we are and of other aspects of creation that might not have seemed relevant or important as we began our human life journey. So at different times in our lives, different things seem to attract or interest us, and often as we get past some of the more worldly concerns, basic survival and belonging and material or social status and success, we start to look beyond that for a deeper meaning, for a greater understanding of where our human life or incarnation fits into the greater scheme of existence. So with that in mind, I encourage each of you to explore the role that spiritual bypassing, per se, has played in your journey, not to judge that as good or bad or to feel any regret or remorse about ever being in that type of state or taking that type of path for coping with things, but just to observe, to see how you relate to your life path, to challenges that come up in your life. To what degree are you willing to be present with stresses and challenges and discomforts? We're all going to have many of those through our life experience. we might find something that seems to give us a long-term sense of peace or relief. So I talked earlier about drugs or medicines giving us relatively brief periods of peace or relief. Well, being a member of a religion might give you that sense of peace or relief for an entire incarnation or lifetime. However, it's simultaneously creating a boundary or limitation around your spiritual growth or expansion. So it's ultimately not permanent, since as a spiritual being you're going to come back to have other incarnations, other lifetimes, where you may have opportunities to grow and expand more, to not limit yourself to that one particular tradition or moral code or whatever you might have embraced during a particular life. So it might serve a person to have a lifetime in a particular belief system that they find comforting, but that's not the be-all end-all for their spiritual evolution, for what their soul ultimately desires to explore, to expand into. For those that are interested in learning or exploring more about these topics, I invite you to visit my website, phinsights.com. I have some references for spiritual or metaphysical topics on that site in the links section there. And also I've written a few books related to these topics. So if you look on Amazon, you can find a few books I've published. Consciousness, Creation, and Existence, A Guide to the Grand Adventure is the first and kind of most basic one. And the other books go into a little more depth about some specific spiritual phenomena, about things like past lives and integrating our experiences. Also about applying principles like the law of attraction, the principles of allowance or balance, how things are manifested in our life. So it's worth exploring more about these subjects. I know some of the ideas I present may in some way seem disappointing or disturbing to some people who have some more basic religious-oriented spiritual ideas or beliefs. But if you're open to exploring more, you might find something that gives you some epiphany about your life, about the world around you, about how other people are functioning, and so on. I appreciate each of you for taking your time to view this video. For now, I'd like to wish everyone a wonderful day. Namaste.